I got my back tube on today. So we're going back to the basics. This is a green Tradescantia, and it's actually a super pretty plant when it's given the right growing conditions. So it will be a lot taller and thicker stemmed and more bushy when it gets proper light. This one was in a really dark place in my house all winter, and so it's really long and leggy and kind of ugly looking, but it can teach us some cool lessons about plants. And actually a lot of customers end up having plants like philodendrons or Tradescantia or pothos or scindapsus that end up getting kind of long and leggy, and they want to chop and prop because that's what they heard they're supposed to do, but they don't really know exactly where to cut. And this plant does a really awesome job of explaining to us where to cut and how to do that most efficiently so that you can get really good babies off of it. This plant, much like many of the plants that I mentioned before, has things called nodes, and growth nodes have all of the genetic information that the plant needs in order to reproduce. And the growth nodes on this Tradescantia are right wherever that leaf meets the stem. That is a node. Now this is a cutting that just broke off naturally when I was moving the plant. This cutting has 4, maybe 5 nodes. So it's got a node here where this leaf is, a node here where there was a leaf, and 2 more down here where there used to be leaves. But you can see those rings around the stem, and those are actually the nodes of the plant. And on plants that have nodes, growth nodes, those are the only places where roots will originate. I hope you can see this clearly, but there are roots coming out of this node and this node that I had chopped here and put this underwater. And you see that roots aren't growing out from the stem portion. They're only growing out from those nodes. Now this is a cutting from a Cuban oregano plant, and Cuban oregano, much like tomatoes and several other plants, don't actually have those growth nodes that the roots originate out of. They can actually grow roots anywhere along the stem. So if you pinch off a sucker from a tomato plant and stick it in water, you'll see that roots come off anywhere along the stem because those cells are all capable of producing roots. So I'm going to show you, if you have a long leggy plant and you want to take some cuttings off of it and you want this plant to be more full, then where exactly do you cut? And I'm going to show you the method that I like. There's a lot of ways to do this, so let's get into it. So what a lot of beginners don't understand is that the space in between the nodes is pretty much useless, because if you come in here and cut it right here in between 2 nodes, this part that's still attached to the plant is going to die off, and it's going to die back to where this node is. And so this isn't going to serve any purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and clip that off as low as I can because it's going to die off anyway. It will probably put out a new branch right there though. Now, same is true here with the space that's down below the node. All of this stem here, it's not going to put roots there, and eventually this part's going to rot off. So you could preemptively just go ahead and cut off, if I had better clippers, right below that node, and then peel this leaf off. And then this is going to allow, when you put this down into a glass of water, that's going to allow where the roots are going to come out to be at the bottom of the glass or close to the bottom of the glass. So that way that extra stem isn't elevating it up and causing the water level needing to be higher than it needs to be. So this propagating can be propagated as is. You could get both of these nodes underwater if you want to have 2 areas where the roots are going to grow out. You can have a larger cutting that way. Or if you want to have 2 cuttings from this, you can actually move further up the stem and get between 2 other nodes and go ahead and cut it there. Then peel this leaf off and this leaf off. And I've got 2 nodes here that I can then get down into the water, and that's going to be a cutting. And this that I cut off here actually has several nodes, and so I can go ahead and drop that straight down into the water too, and I've got 2 cuttings from 1. So on this 10-day-old cutting, whenever I actually took this cutting, there were leaves growing here that I peeled off, like I showed you how to do that. Because if you were to leave these leaves underwater, the leaves are actually going to rot, and they're going to make your water turn dirty really quickly, and they're just going to interfere with the root growth. So that's why we peel those leaves off, and that's why we get rid of this extra stem that you see here. And so you are going to have a little bit of plant material that you can then compost or toss or whatever you want to do with it. Hopefully that gives some clarification of where you should make your cuts whenever you are chopping and propping, and helps you give the confidence to be able to cut some of your plants and make new plant babies.